When you create a new object, you don't always want the same behavior. So you might have more than one method or more than one algorithm. And when you create the object, you want to use specific methods or specific algorithms for that newly created object. You don't always want the same. So how do you do that? Well, you can just create your methods or your algorithms. So let's say you have algorithm 1 or func method 1 and method 2. And as I mentioned, you can create an object, and objects are created from a class. So I'll call this StrategyExample. And we need a constructor. So now if you create a new object, so if you say, you can't really choose if you want to use algorithm 1 or method 1 or method 2, right? You can call, for example, method 1 in here or method 2, but you cannot make the user choose, at least not in this way. So what you can do is pass a parameter here for which method to call on creation, and then if the function is not none, you can set that function or that method. And in order to do that, you need to load a module called types. You can say types.MethodType with the function self. So that sets the function, and we also need to be able to execute it. So I'll just create a function called execute, which just outputs itself. So now if we run the program, you'll see it doesn't do anything, and that's because it creates an object. You see it enters the constructor here, but we didn't set any function, so it just skips this and the program ends. However, we can specify a method to use or a function to use. So for example, execute 1, then it will still not output anything because we need to execute the function, not just define it. If we call execute, we clear this, you'll see it calls the first method on object creation. If we change this to execute 2, you'll see it calls this method instead on object creation. So now it's dynamic. You can call, you can let the user decide, or yourself, which methods to call dynamically. So you can say, when you create an object, which methods should be called during the creation. And this is how you would do that. So you specify a parameter, and if the parameter is not none, you set the method, and then after you set it, you can execute it. So don't forget to execute the methods after. But this is how you would make it dynamic. And this pattern is called the strategy pattern. So this pattern allows you or the client to choose which methods or algorithms, or sometimes called procedures, to use when creating your object. So this can be dynamic, or it can be like hard-coded as we do here. And it's different from just specifying, just calling creating a new object, which is always the same. So by default in a constructor, for example, you don't take any parameters and it just executes a bunch of lines. However, in this case, it's dynamic. So depending on which parameter we specify or which function, it calls that function on creation of a new object. So for example, we can create another object of the same type. However, execute a different method on creation. Now you'll see it executes both methods, and this is dynamic. So if we change the order, you'll see it's the same object type, but based on the parameter, it just executes a different method. This is called the strategy pattern.